Hello once again. I've decided that I didn't want to see my face on a video, and I've decided to use a backdrop of peace and tranquility while delivering a message of chaos and confusion. It gives the illusion of cognitive dissonance that we all appear to be suffering from. A bit like not knowing the difference between your arse and your elbow, or still smoking when your common sense is shouting out, "Don't do it," or denying something that you know is right in the first place, but denying it because convention says it's not right. And it's all down to being human and easily led by popular opinion. I'm beginning to see a strange pattern emerging in my life. Or to be more exact, it was quite possibly there all the time. Now, I've been asking many pertinent questions to those people who are speaking out about all sorts of things. And the pattern is always the same. My questions are never ever answered at all. Am I surprised? Well, yeah, at first I was. But thinking about the way the establishment works, I'm beginning to think about why I'm surprised. And I've come to the conclusion that we are all being given the runaround with false prophets and mass character assassinations. It all seems to be some sort of conjuring trick where we are led to believe in a smoke and mirrors situation where we don't know the good guys from the bad guys. Unfortunately, the outcome of all this starts as a small annoyance and then develops into questioning the narrative and finally into finding out that everything you ever believed in is a falsehood and made up. A bit like having an imaginary friend as a child who you converse with daily and one day finding out that they did never exist at all, ever. Today is a different ball game altogether. We seem to be heading for a pandemic, the likes that we've never seen before. And I don't mean a medical pandemic, but a pandemic of doubt and mistrust. And it's slowly spreading throughout the people. And the internet is bursting with it. And slowly and surely it will enter the mainstream eventually. And hopefully. Now the question I ask is this. Is it all by design? And is the establishment desperately looking for countermeasures? We see protesting groups everywhere, but are they genuine? Or are they manufactured by the establishment as agent provocateurs? We don't know. And the reason we don't know is because we have been told lie after lie after lie. And now we are unable to recognize the truth anymore. Once again, is this by design? I keep asking that question, and the silence is deafening. I will never ever forget the nudge units inside our British government. And the nudge unit, also known as BIT, which is Behavioural Insights Team. and was established in the Cabinet Office in 2010 by David Cameron's government to apply behavioural science to public policy. Now jointly owned by the Cabinet Office and something called NESTA, and that is the National Endowment for Science, Technology and the Arts. It sounds quite innocuous, but they are basically there to influence the masses into believing anything they are told. And now, hopefully, people are waking up, even though it may be a very long process. And while the public trust is gradually being drained away like a bleeding animal in an Al-Halal slaughterhouse, can we actually believe anything else that we're being sold to us, such as climate change, raging inflation, potential food shortages and massive rises in energy costs? Is it true or purely made up by the manipulative leaders? We just don't know. And another mass influence is by lobbyists. They are paid persuaders whose job it is to influence the decisions of governments. Typically, they operate behind closed doors through quiet negotiations with politicians and possibly underhand deals. How would people like us gullibles know? We don't. And the influence they enjoy is constructed very consciously using a whole array of tactics, including psychological indoctrination of targeted groups. Not surprisingly, the mainstream media is silent on all issues, and silence is the key to control. Silence even brings some poor souls to contemplate suicide, and that is no exaggeration. I can assure you that from personal experience. God only knows how many out there are seriously considering to be or not to be, especially when encouraged by psychopathic charlatans. The Canadian government has just offered anyone over 50 the option of assisted suicide. Can you actually believe that? Is that really imaginable today? How many poor buggers will take up that offer purely because they have been driven to it by the governments that have implemented it? It's insane. And of course, their compliance will be readily accepted by the totalitarian regime led by deluded, spoiled children, just like the ones in Canada, New Zealand and Australia. These people like Trudeau, Ahern and Albanese are without doubt the most dangerous leaders in the Western world today, and are just about as popular as Caligula was in Rome. So, my question is this: why are they still there? And why do most Western governments have no opposition? No opposition party making waves? It all stinks to high heaven of complicity by powerful morons with huge egos. Moving on. This then is what the public sees when an elected Tory politician tries to begin a debate, saying that the public has been placed in danger by what many people regard as life-threatening, reckless policies imposed by inherently corrupt and self-serving political and media network. The indifference to the well-being of the British people is so obvious and met with such contempt by every institution of power that enormous degrees of distrust and hatred for the establishment become inevitable. Matt Hancock's tweet about this particular politician had at the last count over 9,000 replies, with the overwhelming majority hissing hatred and accusing Hancock and the political class to which he belongs of crimes against humanity. And society now needs recourse to the law. What interests me is the manner in which the establishment deals with people who speak out and the so-called rogue individuals. Essentially, this whole chat is a list of tactics by which the establishment can use and spin applied psychology to squirt lemon juice into the eyes of the public while inducing them into a catatonic coma of compliance. Traditionally, a spin doctor was used to offset the damage done to the power network by a leak or a failed policy. In other words, spin and narrative planting was done after the fact of a scandal or inconvenience of a self-defense mechanism. All these tactics were brilliantly refined by Tony Blair and his spin doctor, Alastair Campbell, who actually came to believe his own lies, and now, as an older man, suffers from delusional fantasies and lives in a make-believe world of rampant socialism controlled by lunatics just like himself. And these people do not know any differently, simply because they are all psychopaths. And psychopaths have no compassion and no empathy. Psychopaths are not always murderers, but they are equally dangerous to our society. This is merely an opinion, but it seems to me the British political establishment became so reliant on their mind-bending nudge units and applied psychology divisions that massive changes occurred. Instead of these tactics being used in the normal sense, they have been increasingly fed into policy making. Generally, a dangerous, ill-intentioned or destructive policy could therefore be implemented on the assurance that no matter how catastrophic the consequences, the mind-benders would swoop in to dig those responsible out of the hole they got themselves into, regardless of destroying those who stood in the way. The arrogance and the hubris fostered by these people was off the chart. So let's not just forget where hubris ends up. Yes, nemesis and retribution. And it will surely come as night follows day. Moving on once again. Governments dislike any protest group. So when protesting on genuine issues like immigration, technology interference, or moral decline, the reaction is to create a fake group that annoys the masses by blocking roads and vandalising works of art. So, the public then ask for that particular group to be banned. The government now reacts by legislation which can now be used to ban the fake group created by the establishment along with the original genuine group. Job done. No more protests. Now, doesn't that strike you as a surprise? No, of course it's not. Especially when this excuse for a democratic government that is behaving more like a Chinese government under Chairman Mao. And as Sunak said only yesterday, protesting is not necessarily a right afforded to the general public. Wow, that is really scary. Now, the government decided that it could double down rather than issue a partial apology or prove the dissenters wrong because they thought their ability to mould public perception could detract any fears that tremors rippling through the population that someone was deeply and grotesquely wrong was actually a lie. But in reality, it wasn't a lie, but the glaring truth that is plainly obvious to all but a child and the gullible Guardian readers. There is now a taste of blood in the water, and the sharks are ready to feed. Maybe. I say maybe because all the powers that be need to do is to find another reason for the excess mortality going on, and the answer is blatantly obvious. Scapegoats by the way of sacrificial lambs like Chris Whitty, Matt Hancock and Neil Ferguson, and maybe the whole Nudge Unit itself and their communist members. That's a nice, comfortable thought, but it's extremely unlikely to happen. My final observation is this. Either our government and other governments are extremely clever or profoundly stupid. And in my experience, we should never ever underestimate the power of stupid people in small or large groups, starting with committees and working up to political parties and cabinets. There is no limit on human stupidity. I'll leave you now as walking through the forest has left me very cold, so I need warmth and sustenance to recover. Just remember that whatever happens in this world, it is only temporary. Regimes come and regimes go. People always move on to better times, and my thought is that tomorrow always brings hope, and that is something we have always had, hope. The only thing left in Pandora's box when the evils of the world were released upon us. I'll leave you with the thought and the huge human attribute of constant survival. God bless, and thank you for listening to my rants. Bye-bye now, from a lone man in the forest.